Welcome to the Crocodile Lake. Today I will be reading When at First You Don't Succeed, a standard-sized fanfiction by ElliottGreen333. This is a second book in a series. The first book is entitled Losing Control. If you'd like to watch that, it is on my Wattpad playlist. Without further ado, on to the story. Part 1. Virgil. I woke up from my light sleep very quickly as the voice from my nightmare faded. I jolted upwards, now sitting on my bed, panting and sweating. I clutched my chest to try to calm my thumping heart rate, but I was doing very little. My body couldn't move. I felt heavier than I ever had before. The heat was rising, the room was spinning, my brain was slowly shutting down. I did the only thing I could think of, the only thing that I knew that would make the pain go away. Roman! I called out in a dry voice. I started coughing immediately afterward. It hurt. I now began pounding my chest with the palm of my hand, but everything I seemed to do only made things worse. When my door swung open, I saw blob-like figures coming towards me. I knew I was okay. The light from the hallway blinded me, but I was almost too sick to care. I felt the bed sink a little bit as Roman sat next to me, and I leaned into him, still trying to get over my coughing fit. He patted me on the back and hugged me tightly while Patton was trying to make me feel better by telling me words of encouragement and love. I think. I could see Patton's mouth moving, but I couldn't hear the words coming out. Either my coughing was too loud or my hearing was faded in and out. My cough slowly got softer and softer until I could hear Patton again. You're doing great, Virgil. I weakly smiled and hugged Roman back. He had placed a gentle kiss on my forehead, looking into my eyes with a godly smile. What did I do to deserve him? You feeling better, Emo Nightmare? He asked. I giggled, the nickname, brushing my bangs out of my face, nodding. Logan rubbed his chin while he watched my interactions with Roman. Logan is an interesting fellow. He never really explains his actions. He just starts doing something until he's either done or you ask him what he's up to. Virgil, how does your throat feel? He asked. I gave him a limp shrug for an answer. My throat was still really dry, and I didn't want to spiral off into another coughing frenzy. Open your mouth, he then said. I did as told. He pulled a small flashlight from his pocket and looked inside my mouth. He then felt my neck gently with his fingers, with pondering. His eyes looked blank, but his expression told a mix of confusion and wonder. Obviously, he was deep in thought. He stood up straight and adjusted his tie, clearly clearing his throat harshly before he spoke. Clearly, your throat is swollen. While it is from your recent coughing fit, your throat is also terribly dry. Roman hugged me tighter. I smiled and patted his arm, telling him I was okay. Do you think he's sick? Patton said calmly, taking Logan's hand. I know that Patton and Logan have had feelings for each other for a while now, but ever since they made it official, it's cute to watch him flirt. Well, I'm sure it's just his coughing fit. However, I am not well versed in diseases that lie within the Dark Mind Palace. I flinched a bit. Roman and Patton glared at Rogan, who blushed from the sudden attention. My apologies, Virgil. It's fine, I said with a voice like sandpaper being stuck through my throat. I coughed a bit more, not as much this time. Even though Logan brought up the Dark Mind Palace, and I flinched at its name, I don't remember the experience of being over there. Sure, I remember when I was at the dark side, but I don't remember my most recent and unplanned return. Roman kissed my head again, and Logan and Patton began to leave. When the door clicked shut, Roman pulled me away from his hug so he could get a good look at me. His face read concern. It wasn't a good look for him. You sure you're okay? He asked. I nodded again, taking the water glass from my nightstand and drinking a couple drops before speaking. I'm fine. Just had another nightmare and started coughing. Another nightmare? Isn't that the fourth one this week? I nodded. Roman sighed. I've been telling Roman more and more about my dreams and nightmares. He's pretty good at figuring out what they mean. As a Lately, though, he's been stumped. This one was different, though, I protested. How so? Well, Deceit and Remus were in this one. I couldn't see what they were doing, but I could hear them. I blinked, recalling the nightmare. They sounded afraid. Of what? Roman asked. I don't know. Not a lot of scares Deceit or Remus, half as much as things scared by them. I explained. Roman nodded and thought for a second, giving me time to look around my room. It was pretty much the same. My normal hoodie was on the floor, and right now I was wearing two big light gray hoodies. I snuggled into it as I continued to watch Roman think. Roman looked up the wall for a second and sighed. Sorry, Virgil. Thomas is summoning me. I'll be back shortly. With that, he kissed me on the top of my head and sunk out. I smiled as he left. I missed him already. I breathed deeply and calmly before resting my head against the pillow once again. As I tried to go back to sleep, the voice rang in my head, the voice that was at the end of my nightmare. I didn't tell Roman about it yet. I know I should, but I didn't want him to think that I could count on him for every little thing. I don't want him to think I'm annoying. I don't want him to leave me. I sighed once again, letting my mind wander into sleep with a small voice ringing in my head, listening to its words. When at first you don't succeed. Part 2. Roman. I pondered Virgil's nightmare as I rose up into Thomas's living room. I let go of his nightmares for a while, as the normal surroundings of Thomas's apartment started to come into view. I looked to my left and right. The others weren't here. He just summoned me? That's odd. I saw Thomas step towards my spot in front of the TV. He beamed happily at me, taking my hands and pulling them over to the couch. I was barely walking on my own feet at this rate. He set me down on the couch, and I watched him plop down next to me. I looked around. Thomas's apartment was still and neat. It's never usually like this. Was a guy coming over or something? Be filming today and I just forgot? I focused back on Thomas, who had now had his hands in his lap. He was nervously fidgeting. Oh, that only means that Virgil isn't doing so good back in the mind. Are you all right, Thomas? I asked, slightly nervous for his response. He sighed, slumping his shoulders as if too much weight removed. I felt more head and anxieties lately, but I know Virgil isn't really back to normal yet, right? I just nodded my head. Out of all the sides, I consider myself to be one of the better listeners when it comes to personal stuff. Call it my ego talking, but I think it's true. That's why the apartment is so clean, Thomas continued. Stress cleaning? I asked. Thomas nodded slightly. I chuckled. You get that from Patton. Thomas chuckled in return. He does the same thing? He asked. I nodded. That and or baking, I thought to myself. We sat in silence for a couple more seconds, causing the mind to wander. My mind kept crawling back to Virgil. No matter how hard I tried, I knew I needed to give Virgil his space and let him rest. Virgil. That got me thinking. Why did you summon me instead of Virgil? The question seemed to catch Thomas off guard. I just thought last time I summoned him, he was missing. Thomas rubbed his back nervously, his forehead growing shiny. Oh, Thomas, you know that wasn't your fault, right? I know. Well, maybe I don't know. I know it scared him when I mentioned 2 anxieties, but I never expected he'd go missing afterwards, Thomas explained, attentively, his fidgeting fingers. I took in a large breath, letting it out slowly, which made Thomas do the same. As long as Thomas was calm out here, Virgil was calm in there. I put my hand on my host's leg, and he looked at me with hopeful eyes. Him going missing and you explaining your issue are 2 completely different things. However, both were caused by Deceit and Remus. Oh. I could tell Thomas was trying to refrain from panicking too much. I could tell Thomas was trying to refrain from panicking too much. My brain was working in overdrive, trying to think of something that might distract Thomas for the time being. I suddenly beamed as an idea came to mind. How about we start writing the next script? His face lit up, similar to mine, as Thomas ran upstairs to grab his laptop. Thomas came back soon afterward, laptop in hand. He sat back down, opening and logging into it. He turned to me, and we began brainstorming. Okay, what if we turned your experience with Deceit, Remus, Virgil, basically, all the dark sides, and made that a video? Thomas suggested. I tried not to let my face drop as Thomas mentioned dark sides. Virgil hates that name for them, mainly because he was one. He thinks the name is too judgmental and harsh, which he's not wrong. He was made a dark side, but now he's one of us. He's living proof that not all dark sides are cracked up to what they are. Thomas was snapping his fingers in front of my face. I guess I zoned out. I shook my head and gave him a small smile. His face was riddled with nervousness. Sorry about that, Thomas. I cleared my throat. I think that we can make that idea work. We just have to be careful. Virgil's pretty sensitive about that topic. I understand. Thomas nodded. He began to type his keyboard when I started zoning out again, Virgil's nightmare coming back to mind. I'd love to chalk it up to be PTSD and have Logan, Patton, and me be there for Virgil as he gets through it. But something tells me there is more to the nightmares than what Virgil keeps dreaming about. Okay, Thomas said, once again snapping me on my thoughts. So what exactly happened? I was kind of caught off guard. Did Thomas really not know? I mean, he hasn't seen Virgil since his return, but that was probably because of Thomas's connection between him summoning Virgil and him disappearing. And I guess we don't share memories, so Thomas wouldn't know. Well, Deceit and Remus kidnapped him, chained him to a wall. Deceit bit Virgil, and he returned Virgil back to himself before he became a light side, but he ended up beating Deceit's tricks, and we were able to bring him back to the Mind Palace. Thomas just stared wide-eyed and afraid. Deceit really did all that? With the help of Remus? I nodded with a large frown. I couldn't believe it myself sometimes, but I can't deny it. The past is the past, Thomas, and sometimes we have to live with that. Thomas nodded, staring at his feet. Or we could let it go. I mumbled with a smile. Thomas had a new spark to life to him as well. He socked my arm playfully and laughed. Are you just made of Disney jokes and references? He said, gasping from air from laughing. What can I say? I smiled and walked back to my spot in front of the TV. I struck a dramatic pose and watched as Thomas slowly faded, and I returned to the Mind Palace. When I dropped up in our living room, no one else was there. This made me feel calm. Everything was normal for the time being. Everything was still. I sighed happily and made my way to my room and sunk into my bed, hoping that in the morning Virgil's dreams would make some more sense to me. Part 3. Logan. With Pet at my side, we walked out of Virgil's room, leaving Roman to watch him. My mind was buzzing with thoughts and theories about Virgil being unwell. Pet's fingers were laced in between mine. His hand was clammy. I could already tell that his son being sick is getting to him. I looked down to Patton. His eyes were kind of glossy, and he was staring out into space. I didn't take a genius to know that he was thinking. Patton? I said softly, breaking his staring contest with the wall. He gave me a look I've never seen him wear. He looked so lost. If I didn't know any better, I'd say more likely looked like me when Deceit struck me with Virgil's powers. My features softened, and I put my hand on his cheek. I was kind of shocked when I felt his cheek was wet. Oh, Patton. I'm sorry, he sniffed. He kept avoiding eye contact with me. He didn't like crying in front of me, but it was better he cried to me than Deceit. Patton did tell me about that. Well, I was hurt at first. I knew how persuasive Deceit can be. Or at least, I know how hard he tries when he wants something. In this case, he took Paddon's place that day. I always knew that he was hiding something. Little did I know it was something as big as deceit. I'm sorry, Paddon mumbled again. I'm just worried for Virgil. I held his hand tightly and watched him finally make eye contact with me. I rubbed the tears from his face, and he giggled. I missed this. Little loves between Paddon and I. Love. Seemingly the only emotion I kind of understand. Paddon has taught me a lot ever since we started dating, and I tried to repay the favor. So far, he's taught me how to cook, bake, and instruct both a simple yet comfortable pillow fort. I've taught him things I learned from his morality book, helped him with his aura powers, and taught him how to even spread crofters so that I wasn't wasting a drop of it. No reason. Ever since Virgil was rescued from the Dark Mind Palace, he's been experiencing weird things, sudden illnesses, and nightmares which Roman has been helping him with. Although I put a brave face on for all of it, I'm starting to grow more and more concerned for Virgil. As Paddon noticed his guard was down, he began to smile. He grabbed my arm now and pulled me into his room. His smile was wider now. This still wasn't the Paddon I knew and loved. Our lips came together once they did. I didn't want it to end. When we pulled apart, I looked into his eyes. I love you, I said softly. But you don't have to do this. Do what? He questioned. Put your guard up or wipe away your true feelings with a smile, I said, pushing up my glasses. Not everyone can be happy all the time, and when I say everyone, I mean you. Paddon sighed. He knew I was right. I guided Paddon to his bed, and once he sat down, I went over to his closet. I knew exactly what would cheer him up. It didn't take me long, but I found a pile and pulled out his cat onesie and my unicorn onesie. He smiled ear to ear, grabbing me and running into the closet to change. I smiled and went to his bathroom. As I started removing my shirt, something caught my eye. It glimmered from its spot at the sink, catching my interest enough to walk towards it. I gasped once I got close enough. It was a box cutter, clean and exact. The blade was exposed. There wasn't a red tint on it, which made me feel better. Now my mind was racing. Why was this in Paddon's bathroom? Is it Virgil's, or am I seeing things wrong? Put my hand on the sink, getting a sudden feeling of lightheadedness, and thought of Paddon cutting. My fingers moved against the sink, making a clanking noise with my nails, clash with the marble-looking surface. I heard a knock from the door. Logan, are you almost done? Yeah, almost ready. I quickly threw the rest of the onesie on and stepped out of the bathroom. Paddon looked absolutely adorable in his onesie, but I could hardly think about it right now. Paddon squealed, and I still looked shocked. I tried to hide it with a smile. That wasn't as successful as I thought it would be. What's up? I swallowed my build-up tension. Paddon put his hands on my hips. You said it yourself. Don't put away your feelings. Loki? I'm here. What's on your... Paddon's eyes widened. I swear, Logan, it's not what it looks like. He started crying again. I quickly ran to him and hugged him. I'm sorry, Logan, it really isn't what it looks like. Then what is it? I asked, supportingly. He wiped his eyes, breathing slowly. Deceit tried to get me to do it. He spoke slowly, trying not to stutter his words. I never did, but I never threw it away either. I don't know why I never got rid of it. It's just... I hugged him even closer, his head resting on my beating heart. His breathing slowed down in time before I knew it. He was asleep. I positioned myself differently, letting us fall back onto Paddon's bed. I placed a gentle kiss on the top of his head, and he smiled weakly, his features falling limp slowly after. It wasn't easy, but I tried to get some sleep. I'll have to throw the box cutter away. What if Virgil finds it? Or Paddon? I can't say I'm surprised that Deceit would do this for Paddon to believe it. He must have been far gone into Deceit's mind games for him to keep a box cutter. After a couple more minutes, my mind wandered into sleep as well. Part 4. Virgil. I woke up slowly, opening my heavy eyes and looking around the room. I was still in my room, and no one was in my room with me. Roman started to stay in my room a couple days after they rescued me. I know Roman worries about me, but I didn't want to be a burden for them. I looked at my alarm clock, 4:30 a.m. Hey, I got 4 hours of sleep. That's an improvement. It's more than I've been getting with all these nightmares lately. I wanted to go back to bed now, but my brain was ready to be awake and ready for me to start the day. I swung my legs to the floor, standing up slowly, letting my formerly rusted bones get blood flowing through them again. I walked on my tiptoes, not wanting to have the floorboard creak and wake up the whole mind palace. I made it into the bathroom. I began to remove my clothes, turning on the shower's water and towards the hot water setting. I then got in and let the water run down my back. I got chills down my legs that quickly faded as the water moved to my legs. I sighed happily. It's the little things in life that brings me joy these days. I grabbed some shampoo and started to wash my hair. I closed my eyes and let my hands guide me to complete washing myself. Even with my eyes closed, I still kind of see the bathroom lights blaring around, but slowly they faded. That made me panic. It felt like a grip of readily was slipping through my fingers. Soon, however, the light was gone. I looked around just as the darkness surrounded me. I felt my clothes hugging my dry body. What was this? I heard voices from behind me, so I whipped my head around, seeing that they were a good distance away. I stepped closer, my curiosity dragging me there even though I'd much rather be anywhere else. I came to a stop when I could see their faces. Deceit and Remus. My nose scrunched up in the slight confusion. Am I in the dark mind palace? They seemed like they were talking to someone. I walked around to get a better angle. I was starting to get the feeling that neither Remus nor Deceit could hear me. I began to pound my right foot on the ground, but the 3 sides before me didn't bat an eye. Now I finally got a good view on this other person. He had makeup surrounding his eyes, making it appear as if he had 2 black eyes. He had 2 horns emerging from his temple area. They weren't very long, but they faded to red tips. He wore a long cape and a fancy dress shoes with black jeans and a red muscle t-shirt that looked as it originally just a normal t-shirt. But that didn't bother me as much as the cuffs on his wrist. They were chains that attacked like handcuffs, keeping his hands close together lest he talked to the other 2. I could see their mouths moving, but I couldn't hear the words coming out. I guess if they couldn't hear me, I couldn't hear them. Remus and Deceit nodded at what he was saying. I kept thinking to myself, why does he look so familiar? I mean, besides the fact that we all look like Thomas, something else about him. Then my heart jumped. The new side looked up at me. We were definitely making eye contact now. He smirked and I could fully see his sharp teeth. My breathing began to quicken, but the side's shoulders bobbed up and down. He was laughing. Deceit and Remus turned around and they laughed too. My eyes widened and fire began to barrel in towards me. My feet were moving before my brain could process anything that was happening. I ran fast, tripping over myself a couple times, but getting back up to continue my sprint. Now mattered as fast as I was going. The light from the fire kept coming closer. I could feel it. My breathing was still going faster than my lungs would, but it didn't matter. I crouched down to my knees and put my hands over my head. I shut my eyes tightly until I could barely see the fire's glow, but I was feeling it. It engulfed me. This was it. Despite this, however, I still felt awake. My eyes shot open, and I was back in the shower. The water was burning hot, and a small scream escaping me. I turned it off. The bathroom lights were still on. My body was soaking wet, and my hair was rinsed with any shampoo. I noticed I was still quickly breathing, and I calmed myself down by taking one big breath and letting it out slowly. I stepped out of the shower and wrapped my towel around me. I walked over to the mirror and shook my head. What the hell just happened? It felt like my thoughts were fighting with each other, trying to figure out anything that had happened. My mind fell blank as I could hear a knock at my door. "Coming!" I yelled. With great speed, I ran the towel through my hair to dry it out, slung the towel over my shoulder, and stumbled into my room. Once I was there, I grabbed a normal patch hoodie and some jeans and some underwear, putting them on quickly. Then I poked my head through the door, greeted by Logan. "Greetings, Virgil," he said with his usual plain expression. Hey, Logan, I'm sorry, I didn't wake you up, did I?" "Quite the opposite, actually," Logan said as he gestured to the book in his hand. "I couldn't sleep, so I was in the living room reading when I heard you scream." I blushed. I hardly realized I had screamed. "Care to explain why you yelped? You sounded distressed." Oh, just another nightmare, I think," I said. Logan sighed and adjusted his glasses. "You're having those more and more often now, aren't you?" I nodded. Even standing up now, apparently, I thought to myself. "What has Roman said about them?" He's in the dark, too. There isn't a whole lot to go off of. They're pretty vague," I said, rubbing the back of my neck. "Maybe it's about time I stepped in to help," Logan suggested. No, it's okay. You don't have to," I stammered. Logan scoffed. "What kind of friend I'd be if I didn't help? Besides, you don't deserve these nightmares keeping you from your slumbers." I smiled. I always liked how Logan talked, always careful with his words. It was like a puzzle sometimes, trying to figure out what he means. I like puzzles. Thank you, Logan. "Of course, meet me in my room at noon today. Ring Roman. We're getting to the bottom of this." Part 5. Roman. I woke up right as my clock struck 8 a.m. The light was shining through my white curtains. It was almost amplifying the light throughout the room. I stood up and stretched, feeling my sleepy bones crack and fully wake up. I began to move around my room. First to my closet, pulling out a simple white t-shirt that had a crown on it with simple ripped blue jeans and mismatched socks. I looked like a full-body mirror and hung on my closet door. I smiled to myself. I brushed my hands over my t-shirt, getting out some wrinkles, when I noticed a hole at the bottom of the shirt. I looked at it attentively. A hole kind of looked man-made. That's when it hit me. After Virgil woke up, I back from the dark mind palace. He slept for about 2 days straight. We all knew that his body was just recovering, and Logan said he probably had a head rush from getting all his powers back at once, but we couldn't deny it. The air was thick with all our nerves about our friend. When we did wake up, the first thing he wanted to do was take a shower. Once he was fully undressed, Pennon took his clothes to wash, and Virgil was left with pretty much nothing to wear. Virgil's closet isn't very big. Therefore, he doesn't own a lot of clothes. I managed to find him some sweatpants, and I grabbed my white crown shirt to give him. He came out from the bathroom with his towel wrapped around him. He looked kind of nervous, but I showed him my offerings of clothes. Then he just looked confused. "Pennon washed your clothes, so I brought you these," I exclaimed. He took a clump of clothing into hands and walked back to the bathroom. When he came back out, he was only wearing the sweatpants. He threw the shirt back at me, which just made me jump as it hit his chest. "There's a big gray hoodie in my closet. I'll take that instead." "What, Virgil, you'll be hot." "Yeah, but I'll be covered." He fought back. I looked down at his shirt in my hands and looked at Virgil's pale chest. I smirked as the idea came across my mind. Virgil watched my eyes very carefully. Then his pupils shrunk. "Don't do that," he said. Before Virgil could stop me, I put the shirt over his head and fought it into his armholes. Even though I was failing, Virgil was doing even worse. I almost had it too when all of a sudden we both heard a rip. We both stopped dead in our tracks. Virgil pulled his arms down, and we both could see his thumb sticking through the shirts. Virgil and I looked at each other, and I started laughing. I could tell Virgil was holding back his laugh too, but he let it out. We both laughed until we were on the floor gasping for air. I sighed in happiness at the memory. That's when it hit me. Virgil. I quickly ran into his bathroom and brushed my hair back. I then burst out my door and ran to Virgil's. I knocked on the door, listening to a response. Come in, said my emo nightmare's voice. I released a breath and opened the door. Virgil's room was dark as normal, and he was sitting on my bed. His phone was pretty much falling out of his hand, and he looked at me with his half-sleepy eyes. I walked over to his bed and sat next to him. He leaned heavily next to me, closing his eyes. I used my thumb and index finger to lift his chin. His eyes were glossy, and he was hardly focusing on me. Did you sleep at all? He nodded his head. He swallowed and cleared his throat, using his elbows to hold him up a bit. We're meeting with Logan at noon. He's going to try to help get to the bottom of my nightmares. I smiled widely, and Virgil gave me a weak smile in return. That's great, I said. I paused for a second. Did you have another nightmare last night? Virgil nodded his head and readjusted his position. He was now on his back, pressed against his headboard firmly, with his head resting on my shoulder. I was watching Deceit and Remus talking to this other side, he explained. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but when they saw me, They saw you? I asked quickly, making Virgil prints. Yeah, it's weird, he said quietly. I grew angry with this new information. Who knows what they could do to him if he is alone in his dreams? Anyway, Virgil continued, when they saw me, he shot a wall of fire at me. I tried to get away, but I think I should be dead if I didn't wake up. Virgil's hands and voice grew shaky. I held his hands in mine, which seemed to calm him down. I kissed his cheek and let a soft sob escape. I was getting lost in thoughts. Another side? Talking to my brother in deceit? That can't be good. The other side formed in the Dark Mind Palace. We're in big trouble. Now I'm worried. If Virgil's our only connection to that without going to the Mind Palace directly, this could leave lifelong scars in Virgil's mind. Speaking of Virgil, his sobbing stopped. I looked over to watch his chest slowly rise and fall. He was sound asleep. He looked adorable. I couldn't stop myself from smiling. I looked over at the clock at the wall. 9 a.m., it read. Virgil deserves the rest before Logan tries to help him. With my hands still locked in Virgil's, I sat with him, listening to his peaceful breath, and felt myself growing sleepy again. I closed my eyes and drifted away. For now. 6. Pattern. I woke up seeing the lights of the ceiling fan switched on, leaving the room with a yellow tint. I heard mumbling coming from the hallway. I was about to get up and investigate when my door opened with a creak. Logan walked through the door, many books in his hands, all quite looked worn and read through a dozen times. He quietly shut the door behind him and made eye contact with me. Oh, I see you're awake. Good morning, Patton. Morning, Lo, I said with a yawn. I rubbed the sleep from my still tired eyes and watched Logan set all the books down on my desk, then walk over to me. Logan placed a kiss on my forehead, then looking back at me with a comforting smile. You feel better from yesterday? I do. Thank you, Logan. I sighed. I'm sorry about the box cutter, I said, unsure of what Logan would say in return. It's all right, Patton. I'm just happy you're all right. I felt my cheeks redden and a smile form on my face. You're adorable, Logan whispered, making me giggle. I suddenly remembered that I'm still in my cat onesie, which only made me laugh more. I stood up from the bed and went inside my closet to change. I decided to wear a light blue V-neck with ripped blue jeans and mismatched socks. Finally, I strapped a light gray cardigan on and walked outside my closet. Logan was no longer sitting on my bed, but rather at my desk, which I hardly ever used. I wrapped my arms around Logan when I noticed he was reading a book, more specifically, a book labeled Anxiety. He was on a chapter called Inside the Mind, but I was hardly focused on that. I know we already had talked about him getting rid of those books, but I didn't want to press the matter. Instead, I tried to act calm. What you reading, Lo? Virgil's book. I'm going to the dreamscape with him today. I'm hoping that I could stop his onslaught of nightmares before they have a lasting effects on him. Logan explained. I nodded and began to read the page he had begun to read. All sides have nightmares and dreams. However, nightmares work differently for dark sides. They seem more realistic, which will cause anxiety to have strong reaction to the nightmare than any other dark side. That being said, if a dark side is dreaming about the Dark Mind Palace, the dreaming side can be either seen or heard by whatever sides are in the Dark Mind Palace at the time. This kind of sounds scary, Lo, I said, his fingers wrapped around mine as assuring manner. I promise you, Patton, this is going to help Virgil. My goal is to not make things worse. I know that's silly, I said with a chuckle, but I can only imagine how Virgil feels about all this. Logan gave a hum in agreement and continued on his read. I decided I was going to make some breakfast. I went to leave, shutting the door behind me quickly, not wanting to disturb Logan, and walked into the kitchen. I began making French toast when I heard another door close. As his footsteps came down the stairs, Roman was stretching and yawning. His outfit made it look as if he had been up for a couple hours, and his body language was saying otherwise. Just wake up, kiddo? I asked. Kinda. I woke up about 8, but fell asleep in Virgil's room at 9ish, he said, leaning against the countertops while I was cooking the toast. I looked at the clock over by the oven. 11:30. Are you aware that you're going to the dreamscape today? I asked. Roman nodded and went to grab a cup of coffee. Where is Virgil, anyway? Asleep. He never slept last night, so I'm letting him sleep now. He needs it. Badly, Roman said with a sigh. My poor kiddos. I can't imagine how difficult it must be for Roman to see Virgil like this. I passed Roman a plate of French toast and smiled at him. Don't worry, kiddo. Virgil will be much better in no time. Roman gave me another weak smile in return, staring down at his coffee, which he was swirling in his hands. I hope you're right, Pat. His nightmares keep getting worse. He struggles to even tell me about them. He sighs. I mean, I know they're just nightmares, but Virgil seems to think that there is something more to them. Roman's statement made me stop. That kind of sounded like something in Logan's book. You know, Roman's eyes turned to me. I read in one of Logan's books that nightmares for the dark sides aren't exactly the nightmares for us. I said. Roman began to pick at his French toast. His eyes were focused, thinking about my statement. I know that's just another thing to add to the mystery of Virgil and his condition right now, but I hope that helps. Roman and I began to eat his now cold French toast. Footsteps began to echo from upstairs, became closer until Logan was visible. He came around the kitchen and kissed my forehead. I giggled and handed Logan a cup of coffee. I poured for him previously. I made exactly how he likes it, 2 sugars. He took a drink from it and nodded to Roman. As if a light bulb went off in his mind, Logan wandered over to the medicine cabinet and pulled out a white pill. I wasn't entirely sure what kind of pill it was, but Logan put it in his pocket and walked back to my side. Where's Virgil? Logan asked. Right here, a groggy voice called. We all looked over to see Virgil in his normal hoodie and ripped black jeans, walking heavily towards us. He leaned into Roman and grabbed his hand. They were so cute together. Virgil, you should still be in bed, Roman protested. Actually, he's right on time. Logan looked over to the oven's clock. 12 p.m. Ready to go? Part 7. Virgil. We were walking through the imagination, which made me shiver almost every step. It reminded me of the first visit to the Mind Palace all those years ago, with Roman's hand in mine. I felt calm, but still on edge and wary. The bench that Remus used to tell me about was still there. It was broken and withered. Remus was so happy when he wrecked that bench. He came home and wouldn't shut up about it. There was a castle in the distance, and a sun, and a burning bright. Roman was using his hands to create a purple flower, which then he presented to me. I blushed but smiled widely, putting it into my pocket and playing with its petals. Instead of continuing the straightaway towards the dark mine palace, we turned the corner into the dreamscape. It was an interesting sight. There were chairs placed in a line to the right of posters of Thomas's and some of his favorite dreams. Weren't really walls, but there was a platform for which the panel with the microphone and all sorts of blinking buttons. Logan stepped towards the panel, examining it closely. I felt jittery. My nerves were crawling back up to me like forgotten sins. I bit my lip until the uncomfortable taste of blood began to creep through. Roman held my hand tightly and pulled me in for a kiss. I melted into it, feeling everything I once felt float away. Nothing mattered when it was just Roman. Love is magical like that. For me, it was anyway. I could hear his heartbeat. It helped me be able to match his breathing and return to a calm state. We pulled apart, and he moved my bangs out of my eyes. "It'll be all right, my love. This will help you, I promise." I nodded, not fully trusting that notion, but trying to stay positive. I know that Roman wouldn't break a promise, especially a promise made to me. We looked over, and Patton was practically glowing with joy. I rolled my eyes, and Roman let out a chuckle. "Are you ready, Virgil?" Logan said, stepping back from the panel. I nodded and let go of Roman's hand, feeling shaky as soon as I could feel him anymore. Roman handed his books to Patton and grabbed them immediately. I tried to read the titles, but was unsuccessful. Logan directed my attention to the platform. "That is how we're going to be able to see your dreams. If you need anything or get scared, keep in mind that we are not far apart." I nodded. He then pointed to a screen on the panel. "This is where we will be watching said dreams. The platform will take them from your conscious and display them here." I nodded again. "What exactly are we looking for?" I asked, playing with the strings of my hoodie. "The thing that is troubling you, whether it should come from PTSD or some sort of fictional beast, we will find it and then go from there," Logan explained. My heart was skipping beats. They were actually going to see my nightmares? What were going to think of me? They think I miss being a dark side, or I miss Deceit and Remus. How was I going to explain the truth? "Oh," Logan said, snapping me from my thoughts. He pulled a white pill out of his pocket and summoned a glass of water. "Take this." "What is this?" "A sleeping pill, Virgil." I paused. "Don't you need 2 of these to fall asleep?" "I need you to be lucid. Well, I could have given you 2 if you're lucid. Then we could wake you up faster in case of an emergency." That made me feel great. I took the pill, placing it in my mouth and then using the water to guide it down my throat. Once swallowed, the glass disappeared. Logan gestured to the platform, and I slowly moved towards it. A hand grabbed mine. I whipped my head around, and I was greeted by Roman's lips once again. "It'll be all right, Virgil. Just say the word." I nodded. I moved closer to the platform, finally stepping on it. I turned back towards my friends. Roman was sitting in a chair, grabbing onto the seat, trying not to get too antsy. Hannah was standing next to Logan, who was watched to press a couple buttons. A clear tube came down and surrounded the platform, and me inside it. I put my hand on the glass and began to breathe faster. "Logan, stop! You're scaring him!" Roman said, standing up from his chair and taking it to stand next to Logan. "I'm sorry, but it's for his safety and our own." Roman looked back at me. I nervously swallowed a big gulp in my throat and nodded. I let my hand fall and wrap itself around me. My other hand was joining in. I started to feel the effects of the pill. Feeling drowsy, wave hit me like bricks. I started swaying into the tank, but took my head in an effort to snap myself out of it. I closed my eyes, still feeling the light from the tube through my eyes, but slowly it started to fade away. I felt like it was holding onto the light, but it was kept slipping from my reach. I was getting scared. My breathing became rapid again. "Deep breaths, Virgil. You're doing great." Patton's voice rang in my head. I nodded and slowly calmed down, playing with the fabric of my hoodie with my fingers. The light began to fade again, reminding me of the time in the shower. I took a slow, deep breath, and light faded fully, and my world became quiet. Part 8. Roman. I watch Virgil's head slowly drop over time. It's scary enough to watch him go through this. I can't imagine what it's like for him. Once his chin was finally touching his chest and the soft, subtle snorts could be heard, the little screen on the panel began to glow. Logan started pressing buttons, focusing on the screen. Logan and I both were breathing fastly. Pat and I both had keen eyes on Virgil. He looked so peaceful, yet scared at the same time. My heart fluttered a little. This was actually working. Is he actually asleep? Patton whispered to the two of us. Perhaps it unwise to give him a pill after he had just woken up, but it won't hinder our mission, Logan explained, his eyes still glued to the screen. Let's just hope that nothing bad happens, he mumbled afterwards. I was about to question him when the screen began to show his dreams. Logan removed his hands from the panel and began to ponder what was happening to Virgil. These should be his dreams he previously had, Logan said. Patton promptly shushed him as voices came through the screen. I'm gonna shove my mace right through the bastard's heart and then rip out his organs one by one. Remus's voice shrieked. Virgil moaned and moved his head around the sounds. We all watched him carefully until he stopped and we turned our attention back to the screen. There isn't an image, Patton questioned. Virgil said sometimes he could hear the dreams and other times he could see them, I said. Logan and Patton nodded in understanding. The only thing is, if Virgil can hear or see them, they can hear or see him too. What? Logan said, redirecting his to me. Quiet, listen, Patton recommended. Must say, the performance was a bit pathetic, even for you two, my very best workers for this job. But time goes on. There was a small chuckle before the speaker spoke again. Well, when at first you don't succeed. The screen became fuzzy, and it cut to the next nightmare. Now we were watching from Virgil's perspective, seeing him watch Remus, Deceit, and another side talk. I remembered this as the dream Virgil just had. Deceit and Remus looked uncomfortable as they talked with the other side. They were both standing with straight posture and their shaking hands behind their backs. Then my heart almost dropped. Just then, Virgil has described it. A fire started blazing towards him. It quickly took off. I could still see the light from the fire behind him. No, Virgil was mumbling from the platform. Easy, kiddo, it's all right, Patton said through the microphone on the panel. Virgil took a deep breath and returned to his peaceful dreaming state. Turning my attention back to the nightmare, Virgil was crouched down and he felt a fire engulf him. Patton gasped for a while, went fuzzy again. Logan pressed more buttons, whilst Patton and I exchanged nervous glances. Who was that other side? Patton asked. I am not exactly sure, Logan responded. The screen faded back to its life and a new nightmare popped onto the screen. This should be the nightmare he's having right now, Logan said. We all leaned in, wanting to end Virgil's suffering once and for all. From what we could see through Virgil's eyes, Deceit was leaning over a table that was littered with papers. The other side was standing next to him, and Remus was digging through a drawer labeled Drawer of Torture. The pattern seemed to continue with this dream, who could only see and not hear. Logan was carefully studying the new side, looking at his clothing and face but more specifically, watching his interactions with Deceit. He didn't seem as tense this time around, but also didn't appear happy either. This began to laugh about whatever was on the table. I didn't like the look on their faces. It seemed happy, but not good happy. Then it hit me. That's the type of face Remus would make whenever he's planning something big, I pointed out. Pim was chopping at a bit, his eyes going between Virgil, his boyfriend, and the screen. Logan shifted his attention away from Deceit and the side to where Remus was. "Where's Remus?" Patton said. Logan leaned up from the screen and putting his finger on his chin. "The side's color is bright orange, almost red." Deceit and Remus seemed to be playing to his ego, and the side seems like he knows how things should work. Logan thought out loud before his eyes went wide. He ran in front of Patton and shoved his mic into the mic. "Virgil, wake up now!" Wait, what? Wait, what? I yelled. "What is it, Lo?" Patton asked. "I can explain right now. Patton, can you grab one of the books I left in your room?" Logan's words were coming out a mile a minute. I was starting to get nervous. Patton nodded in Logan's command and ran back towards the wine palace. I looked back at the screen, and now Deceit was gone too. Now the new side stood in front of Virgil, a big smile plastered on his face and his hands behind his back. I could see Virgil shaking from the platform. Logan stood barking at him to wake up. The side put his hand under Virgil's chin, getting a good look at him. My fist clenched. Never in my life have I wanted to beat someone up more. In the dream, Virgil began to back up, but stopped abruptly and turned around. I gasped, seeing Remus, with his mace held over his head, a big grin and a smug smile on his face. The mace swung around in Virgil's head through the peripheral vision. I could see Virgil's body jerk towards and lean back against the tube. His arms fell to his sides. The panel started sparking. "Whoa!" I shouted. Logan and I both stepped back and watched in shock. The tube around Virgil rose back up, and he fell backwards. "Virgil!" I shouted. I ran over to him and pulled his head onto my lap. He looked scared, as if his unconscious mind was trying to get a grip on the situation. How did that just happen? I suppose whatever happens in his dreams actually happened to him, Logan said, and joining me to Virgil. I saw something in Virgil's limp hand. He opened his hand a little wider, and I saw a flower, and made for him. I felt tears prick in my eyes, and I let them flow. "Who was that side, Logan?" He didn't answer me. "Who was that side?" Wrath. My eyes widened. "So he's back?" Okay, everyone, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this Wattpad Read Aloud, and if you did, please feel free to give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to hear the rest of the story, and be sure to comment down below other suggestions for Wattpad Read Alouds. There is a link to my Discord in the description because people are trying to use that, and more the merrier. I like talking to people. Yay. This was really fun to read today, and like I said, I really hope you enjoyed it. And like always, do your best.